Welcome back. So, we finally made it to the last chapter of our trilogy on how language models work. We've looked at what they do, we've looked at how they learn, and today we are cracking open that black box and taking a look inside to see how they actually think. Right, so we know these things are basically just next word predictors on a massive scale. But it doesn't feel like the whole story, does it? So the big mystery we are going to solve today is this. What is the actual mechanical process that happens inside the machine that turns your simple question into a coherent, sometimes brilliant answer? We're going to follow a prompt on its entire journey and find out. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to trace a single prompt from start to finish. We'll start with the model's core architecture, then see how it translates our language into pure math. After that, we'll get into the mechanism that actually creates context, then watch how it turns all that math back into words. And finally, we'll step back and ask, what does it all really mean? Okay, first stop, the brain of the whole operation. This is what's known as the transformer architecture. Now, the key thing to know is that unlike older models that had to read word by word, kind of like us, the transformer looks at your entire prompt all at once. This gives it a huge head start, a kind of global understanding right from the get-go. The best way to picture this architecture is like a stack of pancakes, dozens of identical processing layers, one on top of the other. Your prompt's information goes in at the bottom layer and works its way up. The bottom layers might just figure out the basic grammar, nouns, verbs, that sort of thing. But as the information moves up, the higher layers start to grasp much more abstract ideas, like the theme, the user's intent, and even the logical flow of an argument. Each layer literally builds on the work of the one below it. So you might be wondering, how does our language even get into this system? I mean, a computer can't read words like we do. This is where the model has to become a translator, turning our messy, beautiful language into the cold, hard numbers it can actually work with. And step one of that translation is something called tokenization. The model takes your prompt and shatters it into smaller pieces called tokens. A really common word like apple might just be one token, but something more complex like the word reading could get split into two tokens, read and ing. This is a super clever trick because it means the model can handle basically any word you throw at it, even ones it's never seen before. Okay, once we have our tokens, each one gets an embedding. This is wild. It basically turns each token into a coordinate, a single point on this gigantic, multi-dimensional map of meaning. On this map, concepts that are similar, like king and queen, or dog and puppy, are located really close to each other. And when I say multidimensional, get this. An early model like GPT-2 used a map with 768 dimensions. It's kind of impossible for our brains to even picture that. But just having a map of words isn't enough, right? Word order is everything. That's where positional encoding comes in. This step adds a little tag to each token that says exactly where it is in the sentence, first, second, third, and so on. Without this, the model would just see a completely meaningless jumble of words, what some people call a word soup. It wouldn't know the difference between dog bites man and man bites dog, which, as you know, is a pretty important difference. So we've turned our words into data points, and we know what order they're in. But how do these points actually talk to each other to create meaning and context? This brings us to the absolute heart of the transformer, the secret sauce, the attention mechanism. A really great way to visualize this whole process is the residual stream analogy. Just imagine every token in your prompt is a person holding a chalkboard. On that board is its original meaning. As that token travels up through the model's layers, other processes come along and add new notes and new insights to the board. But here's the crucial part. They never erase what was already there. The information is only ever added to, refined, and enriched. So how do those new notes get written on the chalkboard? It all happens through something called the QKV interaction. It sounds complicated, but the idea is pretty simple. To figure out the context, every single token creates three vectors for itself. A query, which is like the question it's asking the other tokens, a key, which is like a name tag describing itself, and a value, which is the actual information it has to share. Okay, here's how it plays out. Let's say we have the token for the word bank. It sends out its query, which is basically asking, what kind of bank am I? It then scans the keys, the name tags, of all the other tokens in the sentence. If it finds the token for river, their key and query are a great match. This creates a high attention score. The bank token then says, aha, and pulls the value, the information, from the river token. And just like that, its own meaning gets updated. It now knows it's a river bank, not a financial bank. And this happens for every token with every other token, all at the exact same time. But wait, it gets even more complex. The model doesn't just do this once. It uses what's called multi-head attention, running dozens of these QKV processes all in parallel. You can think of each head as a specialist. Maybe one head is only focused on tracking grammar and verb tenses. Another one is looking for thematic connections across the whole text. And a third might just be making sure the writing style stays consistent. It's an incredible parallel processing system. Okay, deep breath. The model has now processed our prompt. It's built this incredibly rich, multi-layered mathematical understanding of what we've asked. So, how on earth does it turn all of that abstract math back into a response we can actually read? Well, at the very, very end of this whole pipeline, the model produces a giant list of scores. They're called logits, one for every single possible token in its vocabulary, which can be tens of thousands of tokens. It then uses a little math function to turn those raw scores into simple percentages. So, if your prompt was, the capital of France is, the token for Paris might get a 95% probability score, while Lyon gets maybe 2%, and a totally random word like banana gets, well, pretty close to 0.
Now, here is the most important part of generation. The model builds its response one single token at a time. It predicts the most likely next token. Let's say Paris. Then, and this is the key, it takes that new token and adds it to the end of the prompt. Then it runs the entire process all over again with this new longer prompt to predict the next token. Maybe it's a period. Then it adds the period and runs it again. This cycle repeats over and over and over, feeding its own output back into its input. That's why they call it an autoregressive loop.
So now that we've seen all the gears and levers, we have to zoom out and ask that huge question that's been hanging over this whole series. With all this math and all these mechanics, is this system actually thinking? Does it really understand anything it's saying? This is where the story gets really, really interesting. For years, the mantra in AI was just bigger is better. More data, more parameters. But then, recent research into tiny models like Phi-2 completely flipped that idea on its head. Researchers found that if you train a small model on super high-quality, almost textbook-grade data that's full of clear logic and reasoning, it can actually learn to reason better than models 25 times its size. So it turns out intelligence isn't just about raw size, it's about the quality of the patterns it learns from. This insight also gives us a totally new way to think about one of AI's biggest flaws, hallucinations. You see, from the model's point of view, a hallucination isn't a mistake. It's actually a complete success. The model has done its job perfectly. It correctly predicted a sequence of words that is statistically plausible and sounds totally coherent, even if the facts embedded in that sequence just happen to be completely and utterly wrong. And this gets us to the fundamental conflict at the heart of every language model. It is built and optimized for one thing and one thing only: statistical plausibility. Its entire goal is to make text that flows well and sounds like a human wrote it. It is not directly optimized for factual correctness or truth. That means if it's forced to choose between sounding confident and being right, it is often programmed by its very nature to invent details just to keep that confident, coherent flow going. So after this whole journey, this is where we land. These systems aren't conscious. They are not thinking minds in the way that we are. They are staggeringly sophisticated pattern-matching engines. They've just gotten so unbelievably good at mastering and mimicking the statistical patterns of human language and logic that their output looks, for all the world, like real intelligence. And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway, not just for today, but for this whole trilogy. They don't think like us. They don't understand like us. But it turns out, if you can just predict the patterns of our language at a truly massive scale, that act of prediction becomes its own new and incredibly powerful form of communication. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey inside the AI mind.